Okay, 3, 2.
I'm Jane Bradley, Arts and Culture Correspondent at The Scotsman, and I'm here today with Bryan Stevenson, who is the founder and director of the Equal Justice Initiative and the founder of the Legacy Museum in Alabama, Montgomery. Thank you for being here today, Bryan.
It's my pleasure.
So you have brought a part of your museum to the Edinburgh International Festival. Right.
Yes, we have an exhibition here in Edinburgh as part of the festival, which is called The Legacy of Slavery in America. And Nikki Benedetti, who was organizing the festival and its focus on America, felt that there should be a complete presentation, and you can't really understand America without understanding the central role that slavery played in the evolution of our country. And so this experience, which we invite everyone to come and have, it's at the Playfair Library at the University of Edinburgh, is really designed to engage people with appreciating the history of slavery and the way it evolves in the United States, because slavery didn't just end at the end of our Civil War. It evolved. There was a period of time when there was lynching violence and terror violence. Black people were disenfranchised. They were subjected to these laws that excluded them and disfavored them and marginalized them. And that's what gave rise to the Civil Rights Movement. And even today, we are still contending with a presumption of dangerousness and guilt that gets assigned to people based on their color. So all of that is part of what we explore in this exhibition. And I think to understand America, to have an appreciation of what's happening in America, you really need to have more information about this part of the American story, which is part of the reason why we're so excited to be here.
And I've been around the exhibition this morning, and it's a very, very powerful exhibition, but it doesn't just deal with the impact of slavery in the States. It looks quite specifically at Scotland.
That's right. You can't understand the transatlantic trade without understanding the role of Europe, and European powers in the UK was very active in trafficking millions of people to the Americas. Obviously, before the Civil War, it was the British and the UK that was enslaving people in the American colonies. And Scotland had a particular role in that. Scotland was very active in its support of slavery, very active in benefiting from the institution of slavery. There were Scots who supported the Confederacy during our Civil War. And I think that information and history is really important for people who live in this country to know and to understand. There was obviously a very strong abolitionist movement here as well. Frederick Douglass came to Scotland, came to Edinburgh and spent time, and we want people to have an appreciation of that as well. But we have part of our exhibit that talks about Scotland's role in creating, maintaining, and trying to preserve slavery in America, which I think is important for this nation to be mindful of as we continue to deal with the struggles created by how we sometimes navigate difference among people and between people.
Mm. And this is the first time you've brought an exhibition outside of Montgomery.
Yes, this is our first off-site exhibition. I was very apprehensive because in Montgomery, we create an immersive experience in a place that has the authenticity of place. I mean, the museum is located on a site where formerly enslaved people were forced to labor. Some of our spaces are on the banks of rivers where thousands of enslaved people were trafficked. And that authenticity is really important to the experience in Montgomery. But having an opportunity to be a part of this festival at the invitation of the festival organizers was something that intrigued us. And then obviously, because there is a connection in Scotland to slavery in America, we felt like this was a place to be. And now we're very interested in having other European countries also seriously consider hosting an exhibition like this because, again, the legacy of slavery across the Americas in Europe is something that hasn't been well documented and well understood.
And what do you hope that people who are visiting the exhibition here, Scottish people or visitors, will understand from the specific information about Scotland's role?
Yeah, well, I think a deeper knowledge, a greater knowledge will inform some of the political discussions, some of the policy discussions that are happening in Scotland right now. Who we honor, who we lift up, who we celebrate is something that should be informed by this history. How we think about issues of migration indifference, I think, should be informed by this experience, and how we activate ourselves in the global discourse around human rights and human dignity. The African continent is still suffering from a lot of what was lost during this era. The Americas continue to have ongoing issues, and I just think to be informed by this history is important. America is very confusing to a lot of people right now. We're seeing these kind of surprising, even shocking retreats from some of the commitments that we have long associated with that country. And I don't think you can appreciate that without a deeper knowledge of this history. When you have a deeper knowledge of this history, you know that our nation is still going through this long-standing struggle between prioritizing equality over wealth and power, prioritizing the needs of the importance of human rights and human dignity over just more power. And that struggle can't be appreciated without some greater knowledge of this history. So that's what I'm hoping people will take away from the experience, both locally and in their thinking globally about what will help us advance peace and justice across the world.
And you sort of talked briefly about you hope it'll inform political discussion. What sort of action do you hope that Scotland's politicians will take over this? Well,
I think there is a greater need to strengthen curricula and education across the country. I think every child needs to have a more informed perspective on the role of Scotland and the transatlantic trade. I think that educational reform is going to be important. I think once we have that information, it will inspire new conversations about who should be honored. There are a lot of people who did extraordinary things in this country who have not been well recognized, who I think should be, including non-Scots like Frederick Douglass, who came here and played such an important role in the abolitionist movement. And then I think in terms of how we relate to other nations and how we think about foreign policy and how we think about human rights broadly, I think we should be making the same commitment of never again with regard to human trafficking, with regard to slavery, with regard to racial bigotry and racial bias that we've made in other contexts. And I think all of that begins, though, with education and a deeper and more detailed understanding of this history.
And can you talk a little bit about your own background?
Sure. I am the great-grandchild of people who were enslaved in Virginia in America. All of my great-grandparents were enslaved people. My grandparents lived in the South and had to flee terror violence in the first half of the 20th century. I was born at a time when racial segregation and Jim Crow law still shaped day-to-day experiences. I could not attend the public schools in my community. I had to start in a colored school. And then the civil rights movement created opportunities for people like me, and I'm a product of the civil rights movement. I would not be sitting here if people had not sacrificed and fought and struggled to create a future where Black children like me could have an opportunity for an education and go to law school. And so I feel like I am part of this journey, this long struggle. I feel like the enslaved started this relay race toward justice, toward full humanity, and they passed the baton to their children after emancipation, and they had to run through the rigors of white supremacy and disenfranchisement and terror violence. They completed their leg of the race and gave the baton to those who had to then tear down the legal architecture of segregation and Jim Crow laws. And they've completed their journey, and they've given the baton to me and people of my generation to move us closer to that more perfect union where no one is presumed dangerous or guilty because of their color, where there's the kind of full equality, where no one is being subjected to police violence because they're Black or they're brown, where no one's being rounded up and demonized because they look like an undocumented person. And so that's the leg I'm trying to run. And we want to get to the point where we don't have to pass this baton anymore, where we can actually live in the kind of world where bigotry and hatred and racism is no longer shaping anyone's life. That's the goal.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.